Hi, I'm Brendan Gallagher, and this is Pittsburgh Inspired. Today I'm here with Jordan Corcoran, CEO and founder of Listen Lucy. Jordan, thank you for having me in your home today.
No problem. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. So tell Pittsburgh about Listen Lucy.
Well, Pittsburgh, you should already know about Listen Lucy. No, I'm just kidding. Listen Lucy is an anonymous online outlet where people can go and share their stories without fear of ridicule and judgment. I started it 5 years ago, and it was all based off of my own personal struggle with mental illness. So I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder when I was a freshman in college.
Okay.
From there, it kind of steamrolled, and I speak to middle school, high school, colleges, as well as mental health organizations, and share my story and how it led me to create Listen Lucy. I talk about acceptance. I have 2 books out, Write It Out, and listenlucy.org.
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry, Listen Lucy Volume 1, listenlucy.org is my website. So I have those 2 books out, and I recently started my podcast, which is an unfiltered conversation about mental health. If you follow me, you know I usually am pretty unfiltered. So I want to keep that conversation live and light and honest. So that is kind of under the umbrella of what Listen Lucy is.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
So, and your inspiration came from your personal experiences, but how did it evolve into Listen Lucy?
So when I was diagnosed with my 2 mental illnesses when I was a freshman in college, and eventually, after many, many years of therapy and coping techniques, writing is something that became so important to me. Mm-hmm. One of the major battles that I face, and I know a lot of people that battle mental illness face, is that it's very difficult to describe what's happening to you.
Yeah.
So while I have the most amazing support system ever, they still didn't understand what was happening to me. So I still felt alone. And writing gave me that opportunity to sit down and take my time and not have to try to force the words out.
Right.
So I wrote through what was happening to me. I wrote what panic attacks felt like, what was stressing me out. I wrote about anything and everything. And it really helped me figure out how I was feeling, but also learn to verbalize it. Mm-hmm. And it was this super cathartic experience. So I wanted to create an outlet where other people were able to use that as a coping technique. But to create a community around it. And yeah. I think one of the things that I love about Listen Lucy is that, yes, it's so helpful to share your story. It's so empowering and liberating, and for you to take that power back of what happened to you, and now you get to talk about it. But also you get to learn about so many people going through so many things and realize that you're not alone in your struggle.
And that's one of the things that I've noticed from people in my own life that I've encountered that have struggled with different mental illnesses. They often feel like they're completely alone, like nobody understands them, and even if they don't necessarily have the desire or the courage to write about it, I can't imagine how many people read through the different posts and say, man, that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah, and it's happened to me. I mean, I'm very vocal about, I wasn't always vocal about my mental illness, but I'm very vocal about it now. When I first started Listen Lucy, I didn't realize how much I needed that connection to, how much I needed to read other people's stories and like read sentences that I've said. You know, I remember one person that that wrote in talking about his battle with mental illness, and he used the word saying that he feels paralyzed by it, and when it's so bad it paralyzes him, and that is a word I've used to describe my mental illness for years, and it brought tears in my eyes because I was like, someone knows exactly how I feel, and how cool is that to feel connected for like 1 second, even to a stranger.
Right.
It's so important because it makes you feel like you're not in this hole by yourself.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you've obviously come a long way since you first were diagnosed with a mental illness to developing Listen Lucy and now talking about it. I mean, can you talk about that journey?
Yeah, I think that what's very weird about me, well, a lot of things are very weird about me, but what's very weird is that my anxiety is not performance related. So speaking in front of people is not something that has ever given me anxiety. I don't know if it's because I was in front of people like since I was young. I don't know if it's because I'm a third child and like was constantly trying to get everyone's attention. I'm not sure, but I will say one of the biggest struggles has been for me is that being a mental health advocate and being a public speaker and live streaming my battle presents its challenges in terms of holding myself to a higher standard than I hold the people that follow my community. And that, that's something I'm working on because my mental illness isn't something that I'm going to be cured from. And I think that as wanting to be like a quote unquote success story of mental illness, you don't want to struggle anymore and you want to show people that you can get through it. And you can, and I continue to do so. I just got through a pretty bad bout of my anxiety and was struggling again for a couple months. And I think that's harder for me is that like it's like this added layer of pressure that like I don't want to let a community that follows me down on top of myself and my family and the people that are intimately close with me.
Right.
So I think that has been, I remember I was getting ready to speak for NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and I was a keynote speaker for them. And I was so anxious and the whole week. And it wasn't about the presentation. It was just where I was in my life. And I was panicking, like, how am I going to get up there and talk to people about accepting yourself whenever I'm struggling and all of that. And when I got up on stage, it was like a breath of fresh air. It was like I had an hour-long therapy session with 600 people listening to me, and they couldn't leave because the doors were shut. So it really is super cathartic for me to talk about it, but I think it's that battle of realizing that I'm still an imperfect human trying to battle through, but bring other people along for that to see what it's like.
Right. And it's interesting as well that you talk about your own personal challenges, and then you're holding yourself to another standard, and that adds pressure. But is that sometimes a positive pressure as well?
Oh yeah. One of my favorite examples of that happening is that 2 years ago, usually what happens whenever I have a panic attack is the next day after the panic attack, I kind of like wallow. I like lay on the couch, I'm off the grid because my body's exhausted, my mind's exhausted, my heart's exhausted, I'm just defeated. But a couple years ago, I decided to take a selfie of myself after a panic attack. And I put it up next to a picture before I did a speaking engagement. And I was saying, both of these people are me. I am a super confident, outgoing, lively person that is fine with sharing their struggle, but like this is me too.
Yeah.
And I was very nervous to put that out on the internet, but I did, and it was viewed like 28,000 times and shared across the world, which is hilarious to have that hideous picture of me everywhere. But what it did though was it got me off the couch. Because when I posted that, hundreds and hundreds of people were reaching out to me, saying that they felt that way too, thanking me for sharing it, and holding myself to a standard that sharing when I'm ready, sharing what's happening with me, it not only helped those people feel less alone, but it gave me so many positive things to look forward to and to realize that like I'm creating a purpose for what I'm going through.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so the aspect of you were talking about managing that, you're not going to be cured of your mental illness, but more it's managing it. And I think that's very typical case. It's something that you learn the signs, you learn when you're struggling, you talk to the people closest that are closest to you about what they should do and how to react. How does managing it, how does Listen Lucy help people to manage?
I think the most important thing that I'm, again, still learning, and something that has been brought to my attention over the past 3 months for sure, is that there are so many coping techniques out there. What works for me might not work for the person next to me, even if we have the same diagnosis. So because of that, recovery is very difficult. But also, you have all of these options, and you have to make sure that you don't give up on yourself and that you don't give up on looking for options. I have been coping with my mental illnesses for over a decade,
Yeah.
and my coping techniques change. Writing has been a constant for me, but 2 months ago I just started art therapy, which should be a reality show of itself because it is ridiculous that I'm in art therapy because I'm the least artistic person, and my therapist probably starts taking their own Xanax thinking about me coming and being the hurricane that I am. But I tell her this every week is that I love that I'm trying something outside of my comfort zone because it's proving to me that I'm never going to give up on finding the ways to do it. And I think that as you evolve as a person, what you need to continue to manage is going to change, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's something that people battling with mental illness struggle with, and I do too. Like, this has been working for me for 5 years. Why isn't it working for me anymore? Well, I'm a little bit different now.
Right.
You know, my anxiety is taking on a different form now. What's causing my anxiety from 5 years ago are two completely different things.
And as you grow as a person and your life changes, the things that cause anxiety change as well.
Totally. So that is what's so awesome about having all of these options. And if they don't work for you, to know, don't give up. There's still a million other options that can help. And if I can't help you, if Lucy can't help you, I'll help you find the right thing to do. That's what this conversation is the most important, because people don't realize how many resources there are.
Absolutely. If someone watching this wants to go on to Listen Lucy and share their story, how do they do that?
Yeah. So you can go on to listenlucy.org, and there is a Share Your Story tab that you can just type in. There's a quick form. It's anonymous, so you don't have to fill in your name or anything like that.
Okay.
You can just share your story. You can also send it to listenlucy@gmail, which is where all the stories come in if they don't, going through the website. So those are two options. And I manage all of my social media on my own. So if you DM us and want to share, you can do it that way too. Whatever's easiest for you.
Cool. So that you don't have to sign up or register. You just go on and share your story.
Yep. Just get it out of you.
Nice.
Sit down and write it out. Yep.
Awesome. So is there any way that the people of Pittsburgh can help Listen Lucy?
Yeah. I think just sharing Listen Lucy is so important. The main way that I get my word out there is through social media, participating and sharing it with people. We all know someone in our lives that needs support. And Listen Lucy, we talk about mental illness a ton because I have mental illnesses.
Yeah.
And that's what inspired me. But we talk about every topic. I mean, loneliness, family issues, abuse, drugs, racism, and everything in between has been written about on Listen Lucy.
So it's not necessarily just an outlet for people with mental illness, but
Right.
any problem that you're having, anything that's in your head or in your heart, and you just want to get it out, but you might not be comfortable sharing it with your friends or your neighbors.
Right.
Listen Lucy is an outlet.
Yes, absolutely. And I think sharing that resource with people would be, I would love it. But I think that it's important for us to be having these conversations, and more so than sharing Listen Lucy, I would just encourage everybody in Pittsburgh to have an open mind and be accepting and kind. And when people are talking to you about their issues, to validate those issues.
Yeah.
And to let people know that they are heard. Listen Lucy will find its way, but I love it, and I always say that I worked super hard to create the outlet, but I can't take credit for the content on there because it's written by strangers.
Right.
And there is something for everybody, so read. I promise you'll feel so connected, and it is amazing. Not to toot my own horn, but I'm tooting it. No.
That's really cool. And even if you don't really know someone that you feel is personally struggling, everyone's fighting some sort of battle.
That's it.
Everyone has something in their life that's going on that's bothering them, and most of us in today's day and age, we share our happy story on Facebook and on Instagram, and we don't talk about the things that are bothering us. And so share Listen Lucy, let your friends, let your family know about it, the people you care about, because you never know who is going to benefit from utilizing it.
Absolutely. And when I speak, at one point in my presentation, I always say, raise your hand if you struggle. And obviously every single person in the room raises their hand.
Right.
And I think that's so important. Struggle. It doesn't matter what your struggle is. We all have had that problem that you wake up and it's all you think about. You go to school, you go to work, it's all you think about, and you need to find a way to deal with it in a healthy manner. And this is just one option. It's just one option.
Yeah. And one of the really inspiring things to me so far, I've interviewed a number of founders and CEOs of not-for-profits, is everybody is doing what they are doing in some way, shape, or form because of their experiences and their own struggles that they went through, and they transform that into their therapy of helping other people so that other people don't have to struggle the way they did.
Yeah. There's that quote that says, be who you needed when you were younger. And
that's a cool quote.
Yeah. And I think that in continuing and where Listen Lucy is going, especially in the upcoming months, cross my fingers, there are things that happened that I was failed when I was younger. Whether that was in the school system or by my peers or by myself, or, you know, and failed is a hard word to use because the conversation was very different 12 years ago than it is now. So these conversations around mental health, these resources, they may have been available, but they weren't something people talked about.
Right.
So I think that especially now I'm working so hard to create a system and resource that I would have benefited greatly from whenever I was 16, 17, 18 years old.
Yeah.
And I think that is a huge driving factor on how I continue to push with Listen Lucy.
Do you find a lot of teenagers on Listen Lucy?
Yes. I sadly, but amazingly, it's like such a weird thing to comment on because it's like hard to find the right word, but I also have a ton of middle schoolers. When I speak to middle schools, what I have found is by the time I get home from my presentation, my inbox is flooded. Middle school kids, especially, middle school is so hard. I struggled the most in high school, but middle school is so hard, especially now that these kids have access to be talking to each other every minute of the day,
right,
anonymously. And they don't necessarily feel valid or heard because they're young. But they also don't know enough to know where to go for help. So when I come in and speak, and you know, and they feel like they can still kind of relate to me, it gives them the opportunity to then speak out. And while that breaks my heart that so many young kids are struggling, it is amazing to see them reach out to and see value in Listen Lucy. You know,
because even though they are struggling, they're getting some sort of solace and help.
Yes, and they're reaching
out and sharing their story.
It's amazing, and sometimes I still can't believe that people are listening to what I'm saying. It's like I tricked everybody, you know?
Yeah. So last question.
Yeah.
If you had to pick one guiding principle, one thing that motivates you and drives you every day to continue to do Listen Lucy and be who you are, what would that be?
Honestly, there are a lot of things, but I think the most important thing...
It's hard to pick one.
It is hard to pick one because I think in order to be an entrepreneur and to pursue a passion project, you have to have a ton of things that are constantly going in your mind. But I think the number one thing that keeps me going is the idea of empathy. I think that we're not focusing enough on being empathetic towards each other and understanding the difference between sympathy and empathy.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of myself for being an empathetic person. I think that's something the world is lacking, and I think it's something that Listen Lucy is creating and helping people learn to understand situations they've never been through. I think a lot of the problems in our world, obviously currently as well, is that people don't understand things they've never experienced, and that's not something that is okay.
Right.
So I think wanting and to help people understand each other is so important to me, and being an empathetic person, you know, it has its strengths and weaknesses because you feel everything so deeply.
Right.
But I think that's the most important thing for me, and that's the most important characteristic for me, and I want that to be portrayed through my organization, and I want that to be the goal of what the Listen Lucy community starts to realize is more important than we think.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you So you said you want people to understand the difference between empathy and sympathy.
Yes.
Can you explain to you what empathy is?
Yes. Empathy is validating what someone else is going through, being able to release what your preconceived notions are in your mind, and put yourself in someone else's shoes. So, there are tons of examples, but for the perfect example for me is that, I don't have children, right? Mm-hmm. The struggles that my sister, who has 2 young children, and my brother and sister-in-law, who have 2 young children, the struggles that they face are not ones I've ever experienced.
Right.
But I can listen to them, and I can hear them, and I can not try to bombard them with solutions, but just let them feel heard and envision what it would be like to be living their struggle. And in the same way, on the other side of that mirror, is that my siblings are lucky enough to not have mental illnesses. And I know that's a very difficult thing for them to understand.
Right.
And that's not their fault. But to be able to listen to what I'm saying and explaining, and being able to think about how that would feel, mm-hmm. without being, oh, I'm so sorry, let me give you that. There's the amazing speech that Dr. Brene Brown, who's my girl, she talks about sympathy versus empathy, and she talks about how sympathy is like when someone passes away and you show up and are like, here's a sandwich. Like, right. That's sympathy. And it's wonderful. It's compassion. It's heartfelt. But in order to really understand each other, we need to practice empathy and putting ourselves in other people's shoes and not judge them for something that we've never experienced.
Right. Understanding their viewpoint.
Yes.
And not reacting from your own, letting your own experiences affect your viewpoint of them.
Yeah. I think it's so important because it takes away so much judgment.
Yeah.
Because you can't judge a situation you've never lived.
Right.
Everyone makes decisions in their lives and has their opinions formed from all of their past experiences. I turned into a mental health advocate because of everything I've gone
right.
through. Someone judging me for that is lame.
Well, and we all say, well, I would never do that. I would
right.
never be that person. But if you had all of the same experiences as that person and all of the same upbringing and friends and relationships, you don't know.
You'd have no idea.
Because you haven't been through it.
Right.
And that's at the heart of empathy, is trying to understand where
yeah.
they are and where they came from and why they are the way they are, what they believe.
Yeah.
And not judging.
Yeah, and there's been so many politically charged conversations in the world for the past 2 years, and even years before that, obviously. But right. I have it's been the first time since I've had an outlet where I'm able to express myself. But I think that's the thing that we're lacking, is that everyone needs to calm down and try to listen and understand where the other side's coming from. And I know I always say that every time I get interviewed and asked about that, I'm like, I know it sounds so hippy-dippy to be like, oh, let's just be kind. But it really is sometimes that simple, at
right.
least for a conversation between 2 people.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's what's so important about Listen Lucy, is that it's creating a community that people are learning about each other and learning about themselves at the same time.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And thank you so much for allowing me to come in your home and interview you.
Happy
today.
to have you.
Please keep up the good work with Listen Lucy. It's really inspiring.
Thank you.
So that's all we have for today. Thanks for watching. Check us out and see the full interviews on Facebook and YouTube. You can see highlights on Instagram. We also have a Twitter account. You can search Pittsburgh Inspired on all medias to find us. And until next time, stay inspired, Pittsburgh.